bait. Well, hey, there's one.
Your snack. Oh! Wave.
There he is.
Oh!
There it goes. Ooh. Ooh, there it goes. Ooh, you got one. Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today, October 9th, we are out on McGonagall Lake. Today's episode is all about downriggers, how we use them, why we use them, so stick around. Alright, so basics of a downrigger. So you've got your downrigger here in the boat. Your downrigger is loaded with steel cable, which runs down through a pulley and down to your lead weight. I like to run heavy lead. A 12-pounder is the one of choice, so you don't get much blowback. Blowback is the distance that the ball runs behind the end of your downrigger. You've then got your rod holders, which will hold sometimes 1, 2, 3 rods. You have your releases, which go either inline or they clamp onto your cable. So your monofilament is going to go from your rod down to the release and then out to whatever lure you may be fishing with. What's going to happen is when a fish grabs your bait, you're going to snap free at the release, and your line is then free to fight that fish without having any of the weight of the downrigger. All right, so first things first with setting up the downrigger. We're going to let out the amount of line that we want to run behind the ball. Once we're going to loosen up the drag on the pole, put the rod in the pole holder with your line in hand. You're going to need to take and make 4 or 5 wraps. Make a loop in that. We're then going to snap that into the Chamberlain inline release. All right, so let's talk Downrigger Release. In my opinion, there are only 2 on the market worth putting your money into, and they're both made by the same company. The original Chamberlain, which is an inline release, I hook it directly to my downrigger cable, and on the other side, directly to my snubber. From there, we're going to loosen the drag on the downrigger, and we're going to let that down. I'm going to go down about 7 feet. Higher distance, I'm going to take the Chamberlain Stacker, and I'm going to hook that onto my line, making sure that it is locked into place. Secondly, you have the Chamberlain Stacker. This actually threads right onto your downrigger cable and can be set any distance from the ball. These are absolutely necessary when you're running multiple rods on the same downrigger. We're then going to take our second rod, let out the same amount of line as our first rod has. This will avoid tangles when you get a fish on. Loosen that drag up. Put that in the rod holder. Same thing, 4 or 5 wraps on the mono. And let's snap that into the stacker release. All right, we're now set to let them both down. Once they're down to where you want them, you're going to want to tighten those drags back up and put tension on both rods. So both Chamberlain releases have the same adjustments. Your upper adjustment is going to be for how much tension that you can put your rod under before that releases. I like to run my rods with a lot of pressure on them. That way when a fish does release this, your rod takes up as much of the slack as possible. Your other adjustment is going to be out here in the front of the release, and that's going to be how much pressure it takes when a fish grabs your lure to actually make that release. This is great. You can set these all the way down for the smallest brook trout, or set them real hard to make sure you set the hook on some of those bigger fish. All right, so right here, this real dark line that you can see at about 22 feet, that's our Downrigger ball. Just above that is the Chamberlain original release, and at 14 feet, you can see that Stacker release. One other thing that's great about running downriggers is when you're running lead, you got to be real careful when you're taking your S-turns back and forth, not to exaggerate those too much, because you can get some horrible line tangles. With a downrigger, you can really kind of cut around, and those lines are going to run true off of that cable, and a lot less chance of getting tangled up. When getting gear to set up your downrigger, I feel a very important piece to the puzzle is having a snubber. It's basically a 12 or an 18-inch rubber band that goes between your release and your ball. And basically this acts as a shock absorber to try to help impact from bottom, not losing gear. And another great benefit is when you reel up, it's a lot nicer to grab that snubber than it is to grab the actual steel cable. Another big debate is what type of line to run on your downrigger reels. I'm a firm believer in straight mono. When you get a fish on the end of your pole, you can feel anything that fish does, the vibration, the head shakes. Well, it's same thing the other way around. If you're running braid and a fish grabs that and it feels any vibration from the cable, from the motor, anything being transferred back, the fish is most likely going to spit that bait and may not get hooked. The mono gives you enough stretch that it eliminates some of that in hopes that you're in. So basically how I got started on the downrigger was fishing with family as a kid. Did a lot of lead line, and a couple of my family members switched to copper line, which got them down quicker, and they were out fishing me 5 to 1. And so checked into getting my first downrigger. It was a Canon, I think it was an easy troll, just clamped on the side of the boat, and we were lake trout fishing, and those numbers switched immediately. Basically, I was able to present my lure to an active, hungry fish before they were, and the results paid off. I've since upgraded a couple of times. I fished for years with the Canon Lake Troll, and now I've switched to the Unitroll, which has an extendable boom. It's mounted on a swivel base. Still a manual downrigger, but no complaints. Canon makes great products, and glad to have it in the boat with me. It's my go-to, especially when I'm fishing with friends. Anyone new, I basically know that my bait is going to get there quicker, so those fish are going to see my presentation long before that lead line comes through. And I'll show some clips. Salmon fishing, we weren't fishing that deep entirely, but I was catching fish hand over fist compared to my fishing partner, and it just had to do with I was getting the bait there first, and I was getting a crack at them. You know, we were fishing the same lures. In fact, I even took off the lure that I was using and gave it to him just to kind of prove a point that it was not the lure, it was simply the presentation. Thanks for watching today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to support the channel and go hit that subscribe button. See you on the next one.